Well, this morning's explosion at one nuclear reactor triggered evacuations within a 12-mile radius. Scientists are concerned that a reactor at the site and one about 6 miles away are at risk of meltdown. Steve Karekis is a spokesman for the Nuclear Energy Institute, and he joins me on the phone. Steve, good morning.
Good morning, Alex.
So some say that radiation is already escaping. You have the Japanese government saying things are under control, that radiation is not posing a problem immediately. How do you see it, given what you know, and how dangerous is this situation?
Well, it's clearly a serious operational situation. There's no doubt about that. I just would caution people before folks get, terribly spun up to recognize that radiation is something that we all live with. We're all exposed to it every day by virtue of being on planet Earth. So there are certain levels that that we can accommodate, and there are even some theories that in very small doses that it may be beneficial. That's an argument for another day. But what's important is people should keep in mind, even in the United States, when we had the 3 Mile Island accident, there was about half of the fuel core that was melted. But because of the overall protective nature of the plant and the filters and that kind of thing that are in place, and that are certainly in place in Japan, the key question is what is the amount of those releases? Because it was determined here in our country back 30 years ago that the radiation releases were only about a 1/4 or 1/5 of natural background. So there wasn't any, and numerous studies over the years verified this, that there were no adverse public health effects. Certainly people get scared, there's anxiety, that's unfortunate and it's understandable. But we should just keep in mind that even in the face of releases, we should not automatically fear the worst, because it's going to depend on the level.
Okay, I want to ask you something. We had our CNBC bureau chief there talk about these numbers. I'm throwing it at you, and I want your perspective. Apparently, according to the Japanese government, at the Fukushima #1 or the Fukushima Daiichi plant there, the number 1,015 microsieverts, I believe, is the way it's documented. At that level, it has been reduced now to 70. Now, that's, or 1015, pardon me, to 1,015 down to 70. Is that normal? Is that within a safe range? Is that out of control? I mean, can you interpret those numbers?
It's a reasonably small level. Let me give you the frame of reference.
Okay.
In the United States, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, our federal oversight agency, the limit that it sets on nuclear power plant worker exposure in any single year per person is 5,000 millirem. Okay? Okay. The natural background that we all get just by living and breathing is about 300 millirem. Okay, so you can see there's considerable margin even in what the Nuclear Regulatory Commission believes is still a safe level for those who are working within the plant every day. The levels that I was hearing from the control room as of yesterday evening were at levels that were probably going to equate for someone, if you were working year-round in the plant, was probably going to be about 2 or 3 times what the NRC annual limit is. Okay, so, but on a limited short-term basis, and if those, as you say, Alex, if those have subsequently come down on a limited short-term basis, that should not be hazardous. And then the other thing is, I was hearing the measurements I was hearing at as far as what the measurements were at the plant boundary were even far smaller than that. So from that standpoint, I think we can just, for now, we can be concerned and know it is serious operationally, but at this point, particularly given the protective evacuation procedures and the fact that they're providing radioactive iodine to help prevent intake into thyroids, the public the public is being protected at this point.
Okay, and you bring up that radioactive iodine protection pills that we've just gotten word from the IAEA that the Japanese officials have said they're absolutely going to distribute them. There's no harm in distributing them, is there, whether or not they need them? I mean, this is a protective measure, but if the measurable levels of radiation are not that high, Should people not take the iodine?
There are, as a precaution, people I would think would and should take them at this point, to the extent that there are still people, within the immediate vicinity of that facility, which, as I understand it, they've been evacuated. But we have potassium iodide that is stockpiled around nuclear facilities in the United States as a precaution. And in some states, it's stockpiled in a central location. In other states, it's actually already previously distributed to every household. So it's going to vary, but it's one of the standard protective measures that's in place.
All right. Steve Krekes, thanks so much for phoning in from the Nuclear Energy Institute. We appreciate that.
Bye-bye.
Residents along